We'll start by making sure that the tool is not loaded. There's no strip in the tool. And I'm going to begin by removing the barrel assembly. First thing I want to do is spin the annular ring around so that it clears the piston stop. That's as far as I want to take it. You do not want to remove the annular spring. The annular spring also holds in a detent bearing on this side. Removing the spring may cause you to lose that bearing, and there's no advantage to taking it off. Taking off the annular spring just ends up weakening the tension on it, and you'll have to replace it sooner. Begin by pushing the stop, and this stop is pretty loose. It may be necessary at times to tap it back with a hammer, especially one that's been damaged or has been hit by the piston. Pull the barrel out. Next, we're going to remove the handle pad. I'm using a short arm wrench, 5mm. That's what comes in most tool kits, is a short arm wrench. The handle pad is already loose, so I don't have to break it free. At times it may be necessary to pry it from down here on one that has been on the tool for quite a while. The handle pad assembly is a complete unit. If you do desire to clean any of it, it is possible to remove the pin and pull the sear lever out, which we also call the dinosaur, because it does resemble a dinosaur. In this spring here, these handle pads are glued up here with a very strong epoxy. These screws are usually in very, very tight, and removing these screws, and especially trying to remove the rubber from the top of the steel bracket, is going to cause some damage. But if you insist on doing it, new pads are available for about $60. So put it back together. The spring goes in there. The dinosaur's tail goes on top of it. His nose is sticking up here. And you would leave the pin sticking out on this side. The pin sticks out on that side because there is an opening on this side. Next, we'll remove the spring, the firing mechanism, by taking this cap and turning it a quarter turn until these tangs on either side here, this tang and that tang, pop out of these two openings. And already see two springs have popped out. Removing the firing mech, we'll take the barrel and put it back in. And I don't know if you're going to be able to see it, but the sear will push back to about the center. That sear, we're going to want to press in with a pin or a small screwdriver, and we're going to press in on it and turn the tool downward. Gravity is going to allow it to fall out. I'm going to push it, and the firing pin should drop right out. If I push it again and kind of push down on it, the sear body moves enough to where I can grab it. If your handle is damaged, oh, and the push rod falls out too. If your handle is damaged, it may be harder to get out. A lot of times the tools are dropped and flattened up here. You can attempt to bend that out if you like. Many times it requires a new handle. On the sear body, there's the sear, there's the body, and there's the spring right up there. This screw here holds in the advanced assembly. In this case, it is a straight blade. There's fillets, a few socket heads too. These screws have a tendency to be Loctited in, so you may want to heat it up first with the heat gun to loosen up the Loctite. Once the threaded portion is loose, push it out from the opposite side. And we can push the advance lever out. Be best to push from down there. Next, we're going to have to remove the front screws on the liner, and we'll have to push the angular spring back around so that it is over the opening for the stop, so that we can access the bolts here. You can see the liner is under spring pressure, and it may be necessary to spray some lubricant through some openings here. If this tool has been together for a long time, carbon builds up between the housing and the liner and may make it hard to come out. You don't want to really tap on it, especially from the back or anything. So if the liner is hard to remove, instead of banging on the handle and stuff, put your barrel back in, your barrel stop, and if you position it, just tug on it a few times. Of course this one's loose, but you can it'll just pull it right out, or should. Obviously on the one that's stuck, it's going to be a lot harder than that. The two springs there are the bearing springs, and inside there are two ball bearings. What the strip bearing springs do is they catch in these notches, and I'm not sure if it's going to show very well. That places it where the strip needs to be to fire the powder load. It centers it basically with the firing pin.